Right, so I'm sure that everybody in here is already familiar with the shapes, but just in case there's any misconceptions out there, we want to have a look at them again before we get started. So we know that we define our system boundary, and that's using the rectangle, and that's showing what the user sees, and that's the system that they actually interact with. For the Advanced Hire project, the system is the program, Python, Java, C++, or it's the web and it's the front end of the project. It's actually what the user interacts with.
But what if our pupils are doing databases as their major, so a big database project? What are we expecting then as being within the system? Is it the database itself?
It's not really, because that's one of the misconceptions. And the use case represents the end user requirements, and that's what they see. So for the project, the end user interacts with the web, they interact with the program, they never actually interact with the database. And sometimes the pupils find it difficult because they are their own end users. Sometimes they find it a wee bit difficult to separate that because they have to be both.
So the detail inside the system boundary is not for the database, because the database is shown as an actor outside the system boundary on the right-hand side as we look at this diagram.
That's right, because the database is the back end, and what we're actually talking about is what the user sees as the front end. But you've just led us right in perfectly to actors there. So we know that the customer, or the player, I'm just trying to come up with some scenarios that the pupils will talk about, is the human actor. The database is also an actor, as you can see from the diagram. Can you think of any more that we see quite a lot of at the project?
Well, yes, there is one, and I'm thinking that a lot of pupils read some data into their project, just as they would do it at, say, a higher level, for instance. I'm thinking of a quiz where they've got a file that has questions and answers in it, and they're reading that into their Python program. They put the questions and answers into an external, either a text or a CSV file. So where would we show that on a diagram like this?
So you would probably put that at the top, over on the right-hand side where we put the database actor, because I think the consensus is that the human actors go to the left-hand side, but all of our files go over to the right-hand side.
Okay, so I'll remember to bring that up because I do have some pupils that are going to be reading data in from external files. I've got a couple of programmers that are doing a big software project.
The other part that I've found some people struggle with is the include and the extend. Personally, I tend to forget about what way the arrows go. I know which one is include and extend, so I'm fine with that, but I always have to go back and double check the direction the arrows point.
I'm exactly the same, and I got hold of a fantastic rule. The rule I got was really helpful, so what she said to me was, the arrow points to the use case that must happen. So if you look down at the include label in the given diagram, when you use an include, as you know, it means that must happen. And usually, well, a lot of the time, we're talking about a validation. That's always a good one. If you have an input, it must be validated, so it's included. And because it must happen, the arrow will point to that validation. The extend option, because that's a might happen or a might not option, the arrow points back to the previous use case, because that's the one that must occur. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think it does. And I like that we've got a rule there to help us remember it. And I think now I'll try and pass that rule on to pupils this year and in the future, because they like a rule or some way to help them remember things, don't they?